Books can play any number of roles in people's lives. For some, they're going to be shelf decorations at their parents' house, whereas for others, they're going to be the catalyst for change in their life. Having gone through over 100 books in the last few years, I'm always on the lookout to see what I should be reading next. But the thing is, the recommendations tend to be very similar. Think and Grow Rich, How to Win Friends and Influence People, Atomic Habits, all of these are classics and they're some of the best ones out there. They're all worth checking out and you can definitely draw lessons from all of them. But the thing is, if you read what everyone else reads, you will end up thinking like everyone else thinks. They're a good baseline to get you started and you'll be able to find all kinds of lists out there with some of the classics that most people have read when they're starting out in their book journey. But at the same time, I didn't want to compile a list of all these classics and have them be like anything else. I wanted to make my list a little bit differently. More than anything, I wanted to create a list of books that you can go through to help get you out of a bad time. Shit happens, and we all have periods in our life where we're feeling down and we're feeling like we're not just ourselves. And this list of 5 books plus one supplementary one, depending on what your issue is coming from, will help you not only get back on the right track, but set you on a better trajectory than you were even on before. It's important to recognize that whenever people are down, usually there's one leading factor behind it. It could be that you have so many things going on and so many things bringing you down at the same time that you can't even remember what it was that put you in the bad road in the first place. The most important thing that you can do at that point is really sit down and identify what it was that got you there in the first place, because tackling the problem at the root is gonna be what helps you solve it. Was it a health problem? An issue with your relationship? Bad habits that sent you down the wrong path? A problem at work that bled through to other aspects of your life? Personally, I had health issues that started with my stomach and ended up seeping through to all kinds of different areas of my life. The fact that you clicked on this video in the first place probably means that something's wrong and that you want change in your life. But equally, it means that you're looking out there for solutions for it. And for that, I can only applaud your efforts. Before even getting into the list, I just want to remind you that reading is an excellent way of building you up and getting you off the ground. But ultimately, it'll all be in vain if you don't take the principles, the tenets, and the lessons that you learn and apply them to your everyday life. Try out things and actually apply them. Don't just get stuck in a cycle of consumption where you're just going from one thing to the next looking for the solution without ever trying anything for yourself. I'll show you the 5 best books that you can read to get you out of your current situation as long as you take the principles and apply them, and add a few extra at the end that you can look at specifically depending on where it is that your issue stems from. Now, with that being said, number 1, Cybernetics by Dr. Maxwell Maltz. I'll give you the best one first, and this is one that could help absolutely anyone regardless of where you're at, and especially if you're looking to get out of a slump and really reinvent yourself while doing so. The author, Maxwell Maltz, was a cosmetic surgeon in the 20th century. Every day he would serve people who would come into his clinic unhappy with how they looked and their body image in some way, shape, or form. They would go in thinking if they could change this one thing about them, just this one thing in their entire life, everything else would fall into place. The more he did these procedures though, the more he realized a recurring theme. The people would initially come out of their sessions feeling so much happier, knowing that they fixed the deformity or self-image problem that they were having troubles with, and their self-esteem in the short run would grow as a result of it. However, just a few days or weeks, sometimes months later, he would realize that they'd be coming back with another kind of issue, realizing that it wasn't the initial thing that they pinpointed as the problem that was really causing the issue with their self-image and self-esteem in the first place. He realized that changing one's physical appearance was never going to be enough to change how they fundamentally thought of themselves. So he ended up developing a procedure and a set of steps and a set of questions that you can ask yourself to really identify who you want to be, where you want to head, and allow yourself to find the answers within you for how to actually get there. This is a classic book that was published in 1960, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if it were still being updated and sold in 100 years' time. After each chapter, you have the space to actually go in and write down your thoughts, connect them to your life somehow, and allow you to really pick out the points that stood out most to you and points that you can then go on and apply in your own life. This is not only the book that I've read and reread the most in my life, but it's also the one that I've recommended to the most people and even bought for the most of my friends who needed it at a specific point in time. If you read a single book out of this list, please go ahead and make it this one. It'll really give you all the tools that you need to go out there and be able to reinvent yourself in the way that you see fit, and give you the frameworks and foundations for you to be able to actually go ahead and do it. Moving on to number 2, No More Mr. Nice Guy by Robert A. Glover. On the subject of reinventing yourself to become whoever you want to be, No More Mr. Nice Guy is another absolute classic when it comes to this. While Cybernetics will give you the framework on how to reinvent yourself, No More Mr. Nice Guy will give you the principles to follow to actually go ahead and achieve this. We've all heard the saying, nice guys finish last. But at least growing up, it was one that always kind of confused me. I didn't want to be a dickhead, and I liked having friends who liked me. So I thought it could only possibly apply to those people that didn't really know how to do it right. It was this book that helped me reframe what it actually meant to be a nice guy, the full extent of the damage that it actually did, and how you can actually approach life in a way that will serve you better. The thing with nice guys is that they're incapable of putting themselves first. Although that might not seem like a bad thing for you now, the implications of what that means in practice aren't pretty. Nice guys struggle to say no. They don't know how to put boundaries in place. They don't know how to tell people what they truly want. They struggle to communicate authentically. They struggle to embrace their personal power and masculinity to help them be the person they want to be. By framing it like that, I realized that I hadn't been playing my cards completely right personally, and that could also be the case for you. I didn't have all the traits that I just described to you personally per se, but I know people that do, and they don't tend to be the biggest winners in life. Instead of trying to be a nice guy, this book gives you the premise on how to be a good man, a good person. The biggest reframing I got from this was that I could be a person who meant well, who was authentic and good to be around, and who was ultimately a force for good in the world, all while being able to prioritize myself. It all comes down to the self-image and the self-talk that you have for yourself, and it plays into the notion that you are the only one who will truly be able to make a change in your own life. Take the teachings from this book and combine them with the framework that Cybernetics gives you to actually be able to apply to your life and really see the difference that can make for you. The ultimate lesson of accountability and personal power is perfectly encapsulated though in this next book, for number 3, Extreme Ownership. The co-authors of this book are 2 ex-Navy SEALs who use stories from their decorated careers to be able to illustrate and draw out a life philosophy that you can take to reframe how you view your whole life. Extreme Ownership is all about taking responsibility for solving the current situation that you're in, regardless of what it was that got you there. You may be in this slump completely out of your own doing and recognize that. Instead, it could be that something truly out of your hands affected you and you're having to recover from something that wasn't your fault. It could also be that things happened to you out of your control through a stroke of bad luck, but that you were the one who ultimately ended up being the cause of that, and you know that deep down. The beauty of this philosophy is that it truly doesn't matter what caused you to be in this situation in the first place. You can choose to view any situation in life as good or bad, or you can choose to view it for what it is, the situation, without actually casting any judgment on it. Some situations are inherently terrible, and I'm not here to say that there's no bad or true evil in this world. What is the case though is that it's already happened, and chances are you can't go back to undo what's already been done. The situation is what it is. Shit happens. So what are you gonna go and do about it? Don't think about what others can do for you, label yourself as a victim, or cast the blame on others, letting hate live in your heart and consume you unless you're using them as short-term fuel. Instead, focus on you. It may not be your fault, but it's your responsibility to deal with how you react to it. How can you learn from this and not repeat some of the mistakes that you may have made? How can you take a step forward in a better direction? How can you use this as fuel for your next achievement? How can you start taking steps to get out of where you're currently at? Ultimately, I hate to say it, but no one's coming to save you. You owe it to yourself to get out of where you are, and no book shows that more than Extreme Ownership. Moving on to number 4, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. With Cybernetics being extremely deep and thought-inducing, No More Mr. Nice Guy being very reflective and potentially having a big reframing potential, and Extreme Ownership being very hard-hitting, I wanted to include a lighter read that would still fit the bill of being impactful, and this book does exactly that. Most people in the West would have heard of this book. Mark Manson is a masterful communicator, and he played the art of clickbait with his title extremely well. And I'd go as far as to say most people would have heard of the book without ever actually reading anything that's beyond the cover page. The basic premise, as the title suggests, is that you have a limited amount of fucks that you can give to anything in any given day. So, in order to not completely overwhelm yourself with the amount of things that you're thinking about, you really have to be deliberate about what you're paying attention to and what you're actually expending your energy on, especially these days with the constant stimuli of social media, and also at the same time being in the early days of what will be remembered as World War III, which I'll go into in a separate video. You have to be very careful about what you allow to go into your mind. The beauty of this book is that it's an easy read that's very digestible, and you can actually take a lot from it. The title might lead you not to consider it seriously, but he speaks about some of the most important topics out there today, tying in personal anecdotes of his own that you can connect with, and ultimately giving a very important lesson. If you spend your whole life thinking about what other people will think of you, you will never truly be free. If you spend too much time giving importance to things outside of your realm of control, you will have too much on your mind. If you don't learn to identify what truly matters to you, what you truly identify with, and what will truly make a difference in your own life, you'll always be relegated to the role of being a side character in other people's stories. You were made for more than that. Finally, to tie up the top 5, we have number 5 with Dr. Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. I wanted to be able to include a book in this list that included things about life principles, how to conduct yourself, and a better way of living life as a whole. In the West, we have a tendency to villainize people who have a positive message and persecute them while they're alive, only to recognize their merits after they're gone. Jordan Peterson has been at the center of the culture war ever since it first started to get out of control in the mid-2010s. And as a result, some people are more familiar with him being painted as evil by purple-haired Karens in the mainstream media than they are with his work and what he actually preaches. With 12 Rules for Life, Jordan Peterson outlines basic principles and premises that you can adopt in your own life to become more competent, confident, and authentic. He draws on history, religion, and his vast experience as a professor and psychologist to illustrate his points and present a better way of conducting yourself. Basic principles, like presenting yourself to the world with confidence, making friends with people who want the best for you, and comparing yourself only to who you were yesterday, are all going to be beneficial for you. Depending on how you even got into your current situation, you could find that adopting these principles and actually living by them are going to be enough to get you out of where you are in the first place. More than anything though, the goal with this book, as well as all of the other ones that we've already spoken about, are not to get you back to where you once were, but instead to be in a much better place where you're actually thriving instead of surviving and going on a trajectory that you're actually proud to be on. These 5 books would be key to help anyone get out of any current bad situation that they find themselves in. And I'm very confident that by reading all of them, you'd be able to have a great impact in your own life. As I was putting this list together though, I realized that people get into slumps in the first place for all kinds of different reasons. I'm confident that these 5 books would help anyone and everyone who is currently at a downtime to actually help themselves pick themselves back up. But equally, because we all get into bad times for different reasons, I wanted to present a few other ones that you can take depending on your current situation and what got you there, that might be helpful for you to actually be able to identify the root of your problem and deal with it at its source. Of course, problems are nuanced and I can't tackle every single one of them, but these are some of the core ones that I thought of that I've also read around and can recommend something based on what I've already read myself. Firstly, if like me, your downward spiral started from a health issue, the first and main book that I recommend that you pick up is Dr. Mark Hyman's The Ultramind Solution. You have to understand that food is the fuel that our bodies run on, and equally that we're constantly feeding it each and every day. So if you make bad decisions in terms of what you're feeding yourself, your body will react in kind. The biggest lesson I had personally was that the mind and the gut are the 2 most connected systems in the entire body. That's the reason why if you're ever feeling anxious or nervous, you might need to use the toilet. Equally, if you struggle with brain fog, chances are it's coming from the food that you're eating and the impact that that's having on your body. This book helped me understand this process better, understand what my body needs to function optimally, and also helped me give importance to this whole process and the role that it plays in my life as a whole. Secondly, in terms of relationships, if everything started to go downhill for you as a result of a relationship, or lack thereof, with a significant other, you may be best served checking out Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus by John Gray. I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be some kind of relationship coach, but I know for a fact that knowing the basic differences between the two sexes has helped me understand how to navigate relationships better. It may help you uncover where some things might have gone wrong for you, or give you some pointers to make things better. Equally, if you're still in that relationship and things aren't going so well for you, I would definitely recommend one of the classics that could have easily made this top 5 list, The Way of the Superior Man. Similarly to No More Mr. Nice Guy, he talks about principles that can help you achieve more mastery over yourself and relationship, approaching it from a more spiritual angle and helping you identify your purpose in life and what women want. It is very much one of the classics. I didn't end up including it in my list because of the balance that I wanted to have and the ideas and structures that I actually wanted to bring into that list in the first place. But it could have very easily been there, and it really is one of the best books out there. Going into the third of the main reasons though, victimhood. If you feel like you're a victim of the circumstances that life has given you, or that the universe is working against you in any way, I recommend you check out Man's Search for Meaning by Dr. Viktor E. Frankl. I fully understand that sometimes life throws things at you that are just hard to comprehend. I'm personally extremely grateful that I've never had to deal with the vast majority of these issues, and I'm not here to pretend that I have a solution for them, but rather a different perspective to be able to offer. Man's Search for Meaning was the first book that Dr. Frankl wrote after coming out of the concentration camp that he was being held in during the Holocaust. To sum up my main takeaway briefly, during his time there, he realized that some people perished quickly, while others showed an almost superhuman resolve in staying alive despite all the horrors they were going through and that were being perpetrated on them. It showed me that with a purpose, with a goal, with a higher calling than just being good to yourself, people are able to make it through almost anything. I'm not one to downplay the personal tragedies that people have to go through, and we all process grief in our own way. Although it's quite a heavy read, Man's Search for Meaning could contain a very strong message for you if that's the case. Bad habits are another one that are easy to set people on downward spirals. I've personally realized that a lot of the times it's actually not the bad habit that was the core reason for the struggle in the first place, but rather it was something else that led them down to this bad habit that just exacerbated the downward spiral. I've intentionally called this bad habits rather than taking drugs, gambling, excessive drinking, overeating, or anything else, specifically because them being habits is what holds the key to breaking them in the first place. Most people have heard of Atomic Habits by James Clear, and honestly, I believe that's the case because it's the best one out there to illustrate how to identify a habit loop, the trigger and reward mechanisms that you have in place, and how to break them. The Power of Habit and The Chimp Paradox are two other great books that you can read about habits if you really want to dig deep into it. But honestly, if you take Atomic Habits, really dissect what it's saying, and apply what you learn into your own life, you have everything there to actually be able to make the difference and break those in the first place. And finally, the last problem we're touching on is when it's related to work. It may be that you have a problem in your job, an impasse in your career, or a general issue in the realm of work that's just leading you towards your slump. All 5 of the books that I mentioned would definitely help you out, not just for work, but for any of these other situations. But for work specifically, I honestly recommend anything written by Cal Newport. So Good They Can't Ignore You is a great book that teaches you how to build up career capital and use it in a way where you can leverage yourself to a better position within the company you're at, or for any other role that you end up taking moving forward. His key message here is to build up skill sets that you can use and that can make you valuable not just to the organization you're working for, but to any organization that could benefit from them. Deep Work, also by Cal Newport, is another absolute classic by him that I would recommend to literally anyone who's looking to narrow down on becoming better at actually improving their output and their focus in their everyday tasks. Particularly on the topic of getting out of a slump though and picking yourself back up from the floor, I really think So Good That They Can't Ignore You is the better one to start out with. And so those are the 5 books that I recommend you to read to get yourself out of a slump, regardless of what got you there in the first place, with a few extra ones on top to add in depending on what the situation was. Ultimately, the 2 biggest lessons that I've personally had in terms of digging myself out of my own hole are that firstly, no one is coming to save you. And ultimately, it's entirely up to you, and you're the only one who's going to be able to get you out of the current situation you're in. You may have some people in your life that could help, and definitely don't discount them. But keep in mind that no one can help you if you don't help yourself. And secondly, especially if you're looking to get into reading as a way of picking yourself up from where you're at, actually apply what you read. Don't just consume. Actively make notes about what you're learning. Make an effort to go out and try what you're reading. If you just keep it as knowledge in your mind rather than wisdom you try out, you're not really doing anything for yourself. Regardless of the situation you're in, know that you can get out of it. Nothing truly great has ever happened without struggle. I know that at the time it can seem like the world is collapsing around you, but just know that once you're over this period and once you've taken that step over that hurdle, you're going to remember this as a foundational period in your life which helped you build yourself up. Take care of yourself, put yourself first, and use these books and the lessons within them to help you overcome whatever it is that you're going through. Thanks for sticking through to the end. I hope that was valuable. If you have any other suggestions of books that you've read, things that you've done that have helped you get out of a tough time, please leave it in the comments below to help other people out. Also, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. We're just getting started on this journey, and I look forward to seeing you here next time.